You've felt it, haven't you? That quiet suspicion, that strange knowing that the world you were taught to believe in, the linear world, the surface world, is not the whole story. You look at history, at power, at the way events unfold, and something doesn't sit right, as if there's another layer beneath the timeline, a hand just behind the curtain, a force guiding the course of civilization, unseen but unmistakable. It's not paranoia, it's recognition. Because secret societies, the true ones, have always been here. Not just in stories, not just in fiction, but woven into the fabric of the world itself. They didn't disappear, they didn't go extinct, they just became harder to see. Hidden not in shadows, but in symbols, in architecture, in rituals disguised as routine, in organizations that speak of service, but move in silence. And the reason you felt this quiet pulse your whole life is because your soul remembers. We're taught that history is random, that empires rise and fall by chance, that revolutions spark from coincidence, that technology, culture, and thought evolve like leaves in the wind. But what if that's the illusion? What if behind every war, every upheaval, every renaissance, there was influence? A whisper in the ear of the king, a suggestion in the mind of the scientist, a push behind the scenes. Not always malicious, but always directed. Secret societies don't need to hold office, they hold influence. And in a world shaped by perception, influence is power. Across every civilization, the story repeats. Asterisk, the mystery schools of Egypt, where initiates learned sacred geometry, soul alchemy, and cosmic law only after passing trials of silence and discipline. Asterisk, the Pythagorean Brotherhood, who knew that numbers weren't just math, they were keys to the universe. Asterisk, the Knights Templar, protectors of secrets the Church tried to erase. Asterisk, the Freemasons, architects not only of cities, but of ideologies. Asterisk, the Rosicrucians, carriers of Hermetic wisdom and cosmic philosophy. Asterisk. And yes, the Illuminati, not the cartoonish villains sold by pop culture, but real thinkers who sought to illuminate the mind and were swiftly hunted for it. These weren't just clubs, they were networks of knowledge, guardians of information too dangerous to be taught openly. Why you're hearing this now? For centuries, these groups moved quietly, but today the signs are surfacing again, not because the societies changed, but because you did. Your awareness is increasing. You notice the symbols on the dollar bill, the layout of Washington, D.C., the recurring pyramids, eyes, owls, suns. You begin to sense that the world was designed, not for chaos, but for control. And that's when the question hits. If I've been lied to about this, what else have I forgotten? This is not conspiracy. This is revelation. Because when you start to peel back the surface not with fear, but with awareness, you realize you've only been living in one layer of reality. And the deeper truths, they were never hidden to keep them from you. They were hidden to make sure you'd never think to look. But you're looking now. And once your eyes adjust, you'll see them everywhere. Forget what Hollywood told you. Secret societies are not about hooded rituals in candlelit basements or cartoon villains with plans to destroy the world. They are far more ancient, far more influential, and far more nuanced. A real secret society doesn't seek attention. It doesn't need to. It lives in the architecture of power, in the shadows of governments, in the silence of temples, in the geometry of cathedrals, and most of all in the minds of those trained to see what others can't. These societies don't just hide secrets, they are the secret, and what they truly guard is knowledge. What is a secret society really? At their core, secret societies are not just organizations, they are structures of initiation. Their purpose is not simply to gather, but to transform, to initiate the few who are willing into truths that most of the world has forgotten or was never meant to know. They work with symbols, not slogans, with archetypes, not politics, with rituals that bypass the intellect and imprint directly onto the subconscious. To the untrained eye, it all looks like pageantry, but to the initiate, every gesture, every word, every object holds meaning. The sword, the compass, the square, the eye, the veil, the silence. They are not decorations, they are keys. And behind every oath, every rite of passage, is a single question. Are you ready to know what can never be spoken? Why secrecy? The secrecy isn't just about hiding, it's about protection of the knowledge and of the initiate. Because not all truth is safe. Some truths awaken, some shatter illusions, some burn through the ego like fire through dry grass. And for the unprepared, that can be dangerous. You don't give sacred fire to those who will set the world ablaze. You give it to those who have mastered themselves. That's why these societies use layers, degrees, symbols, not to exclude, but to filter, to find the few who are ready to carry knowledge without using it for domination. But not all succeeded in this. Some secret societies stayed aligned with the light, others drifted into shadow. And that's where the story turns. Two paths, one structure. There are and have always been two currents flowing through these hidden orders. Asterisk. One path uses knowledge to liberate the soul. Asterisk. The other uses knowledge to control the world. They may wear the same robes, speak the same phrases, stand in the same temples, but their intent makes them opposites. The light path seeks unity with Source through wisdom, inner mastery, and truth. The dark path seeks power over others through manipulation, illusion, and fear. And here's the twist. Both can exist within the same society, sometimes even in the same person. This is why secret societies are not good or evil. They are tools. Just like fire, it can warm or destroy. It all depends on who's holding it. Even today, the structure of secret societies echoes through our institutions. Universities with ancient rituals, think tanks with oaths of silence, fraternities modeled on Masonic degrees, even tech companies using alchemical symbols in their logos. Because the structure of initiation still works, the symbols still work, the energy still flows. What changes is whether the people behind it are seeking illumination or simply more influence. And that's why the most powerful secret is not theirs, it's yours. Because once you learn to see their structure, you can see through it. You can remember that the symbols are not theirs to own, they are humanity's inheritance. And now, they're waking up again, in you. They call it conspiracy. They call it myth. But what they're really afraid of is what lies beneath those words, knowledge. Not facts, not data, but the kind of knowledge that changes people, that rearranges your perception of self, reality, power, and God. And for thousands of years, secret societies have served one central purpose: to preserve that knowledge and to keep it out of the wrong hands. Or so they claimed. Because not all keepers of knowledge protect it for the same reasons. Some guard the light until humanity is ready. Others guard it so it never sees the light at all. And in that paradox, you find the truth. The ancient flame. In ancient Egypt, The priests of the temples weren't just religious figures. They were mathematicians, astronomers, metaphysicians. They spoke with stars. They mapped the soul. And they passed down teachings that would later echo in Greece, in Persia, in India. They understood vibration. They studied the geometry of the cosmos. They knew the body was a temple not symbolically but literally, a vessel for divine energy tuned by frequency, color, sound, and intention. This knowledge, the sacred science of soul and matter, became the foundation of what secret societies would later guard. The Pythagoreans took it to Europe. The Essenes hid it in scrolls. The Hermeticists encoded it in texts like the Corpus Hermeticum and the Kybalion. The Gnostics embedded it in myth. The Templars buried it beneath cathedrals, and the Rosicrucians scattered it in symbols and allegories, hidden in plain sight. They weren't hiding fairy tales. They were hiding technology, spiritual technology. What they protected. The knowledge they preserved included asterisk, the mechanics of the astral body. Asterisk, how to direct energy through will. Asterisk, the power of geometry and sound to unlock consciousness. Asterisk, the truth of reincarnation and soul contracts. Asterisk, the ancient art of manifestation through sigils and intention. Asterisk, the existence of interdimensional beings. Asterisk, and perhaps most controversially, the divine spark in every human being. They taught that divinity was not external, that salvation didn't come from a throne in the sky but from within, that the Christ was a state, not a figure, that the body was a vehicle of light, that the universe was a living mind. And that knowledge was a threat to every empire built on control. When religion became power, the early church knew this. So did the kings, the emperors, the conquerors. They didn't just want to rule land. They wanted to rule the narrative. So the ancient teachings were labeled heresy. Temples were burned. Scrolls were destroyed. Mystics were silenced. And when that didn't work, the teachings were absorbed, twisted, and rebranded. The Christ was turned into an idol. The serpent was turned into Satan. The feminine was erased. The body became shameful, and initiation became sin. But the secret societies kept the flame alive, underground, in code, hidden inside architecture, disguised as allegory, passed from initiate to initiate. They didn't fight openly. They waited. They preserved. The Enlightenment and the split. By the 1700s, the world changed again. Science and philosophy began to rise. The Freemasons emerged as a visible front for hidden orders. They helped spread Enlightenment ideas, liberty, reason, human dignity, all rooted in ancient esoteric law. But even here, the split grew wider. Some sought to free minds, others sought to shape them. And out of this tension came stories of the Illuminati, a group allegedly aiming to bring hidden knowledge to light or manipulate it for global control. Were they real? Yes. Are they still active? That's the wrong question. Because the current didn't die. It evolved. It morphed into think tanks, secret orders, private clubs, digital powerhouses. And the knowledge they protect? It's still the same. The real threat. It was never about hiding from the people. It was about keeping the people from realizing their own power. Because if you knew the truth, if you understood the full potential of your consciousness, if you realized that symbols shape thought, that thought shapes reality, and that reality is programmable through awareness, then who would need kings? Who would fear death? Who would obey blindly? That is the real forbidden knowledge. And it was never lost. It was just hidden. Until now. History as you know it is not a neutral sequence of events. It is a curated narrative shaped not only by those who wrote it, but by those who stayed hidden while doing so. For centuries, secret societies have not merely existed alongside the unfolding of history, they have subtly, quietly, and often invisibly directed its course. Behind the rise and fall of empires, beneath revolutions and renaissances, there was always a whisper, a symbol, a hand just out of sight. Take the French Revolution. To the world, it was a populist uprising, the cry of liberty. But behind the scenes were carefully placed thinkers, Freemasonic lodges, and esoteric symbols embedded in revolutionary rhetoric. The Declaration of the Rights of Man reads like an echo of Hermetic law. Was it spontaneous, or was it engineered? In the American founding, too, we see fingerprints. 13 colonies, 13 steps on the pyramid, the eye of providence above all. Coincidence or code? Washington, D.C. was designed with sacred geometry, streets aligned to the solstices, buildings arranged to form sigils of power. The founding fathers were not just politicians. Many were initiated into orders that held ancient knowledge. They weren't just building a country, they were building a structure, one that mirrored an invisible blueprint. Even in the world wars, secret influence loomed. Certain societies operated within intelligence agencies, shaping ideology, guiding outcomes. Esoteric symbolism was embedded in Nazi obsession with occultism and ancient relics. The Thule Society wasn't a myth. It was a portal, one that influenced minds at the highest levels. Meanwhile, Allied nations were developing psychological operations based on mass persuasion, archetypes, and myth tools, long understood by initiates of hidden orders. And today, the stage is digital, but the pattern remains. Modern think tanks, philanthropic foundations, global councils, they do not wear robes, but the ritual continues. Private meetings behind closed doors. Agendas shaped not by democratic will, but by networks of influence that trace back to the same principles once protected in stone temples and underground chambers. What most see as chaos, economic collapse, cultural shifts, mass media distractions may be more directed than we think. When you study patterns, not events, you begin to see it. Revolutions that topple one regime only to replace it with another equally controlled. Movements that rise from nowhere, backed by invisible money. Technologies that emerge not from necessity, but from strategic timing. The influence is not in the open. It never was. It moves through art, architecture, education, finance, not through force, through frequency. And it is always dressed in the costume of progress. What looks like modernity is often ancient control in new clothing. The irony is that the societies behind these shifts may not even agree among themselves. Some factions seek enlightenment, evolution, global harmony. Others seek domination, digital feudalism, mass dependency. But both sides use the same infrastructure, the same symbols, networks, rituals. That's what makes it hard to see. Not every conspiracy is true, but not every revolution is pure. Power does not only speak with a crown or a gun. Sometimes it speaks through silence, through symbols etched into public buildings, through policies passed without attention, through phrases repeated until they are mistaken for truth. The hand of history is not always seen because it is not a hand at all. It is a mind, a group mind, a thought form cultivated in hidden temples, whispered through generations, and now encoded into the very fabric of civilization. And the question is no longer whether it exists. The question is whether you can see it, because the greatest illusion of control is the belief that it isn't there. Look closer. Symbols are everywhere. They're not just decoration, they are instructions, blueprints, gateways. They don't scream, they whisper. And in that silence, they bypass the conscious mind and speak directly to something deeper, your subconscious, your cellular memory, the part of you that remembers what the world forgot. Secret societies have always known this. That's why their power doesn't lie in weapons or armies, but in architecture, in iconography, in sacred geometry that invisibly sculpts belief. They don't need to control the world physically, they shape it symbolically. Because when you control the symbols, you don't need to control the people. They begin to control themselves. Walk through any capital city and you'll see it. The pyramid, the obelisk, the all-seeing eye, the checkerboard floor, the sunburst halo, the serpent, the compass and square, the twin pillars. You think they're just artistic choices, relics of the past, but you feel something when you look at them. You always have that pull, that unease, that curiosity, that sense that something sacred is being encoded before your eyes, and you were never given the key. The secret is, the key is you. These symbols weren't placed randomly. They were planted, like seeds in the collective field of humanity. Because symbols are not passive, they activate, they resonate, they instruct reality. The eye of providence on the dollar bill, not just a design, it watches, it marks, it reminds those initiated that the world is not as it seems. The pyramid beneath it, not just a nod to ancient Egypt, it's the map of power. 13 steps, 13 bloodlines, capstones separated from the base. The power is not part of the system, it floats above it. Look at the architecture of Washington, D.C., Paris, the Vatican, not just cities. These are temples laid out according to celestial alignments, numerological principles, sacred design. The domes, the obelisks, the underground chambers, they echo ancient blueprints carried from Babylon, Egypt, Greece, not through culture, but through society, through the hidden orders who never forgot what the world tried to erase. You were taught that symbols are things to be interpreted, but the initiated know better. Symbols aren't just messages, they are technologies. They do something. They change perception. They unlock doors in the psyche. They create resonance fields that affect thought and behavior, even without your awareness. A spiral invokes motion. A cube invokes structure. A triangle directs force. A circle harmonizes. The vesica piscis, the flower of life, the hexagram, these aren't designs. They are laws written in visual form. And once you understand that, the world starts to look different. You begin to see that logos, flags, brands, even architecture are not neutral. They are charged, designed to elicit certain frequencies: loyalty, fear, awe, submission, aspiration. The greatest magicians of the modern era don't wear robes. They wear suits. They run corporations, nations, movements. But their tools are still ancient, still rooted in symbology, color theory, archetype, geometry, sound. Because the deepest power is not in controlling actions, it's in shaping perception. And secrecy? That's part of the spell. Because what's hidden becomes powerful, not because it's secret, but because you were taught not to look. The power of the symbol is that it hides in plain sight. It becomes invisible by becoming normal. You stop questioning it, but it never stops working. The Freemasons knew this. The Rosicrucians knew this. The Builders, the Templars, the Illuminated ones. They understood that once a symbol is planted in culture, it becomes self-replicating. It doesn't need priests or temples anymore. It uses the masses as its temple. It uses you. And that's the final layer of secrecy, not that the world is full of symbols, but that the symbols are already inside you. Because you are the temple, your mind is the altar, your thoughts are the offering. And if you don't choose what symbols shape your life, someone else already has. You've been looking for answers out there, in books, in buildings, in hidden orders and ancient rites. You've been following the trail of symbols, the whispers of lost knowledge, the stories of those who pulled the strings behind the curtain. And that path has led you somewhere unexpected, back to yourself, because the real secret, the one they never wrote down, the one no society can guard behind closed doors, was never about them. It was about you. All of this, the symbols, the structures, the secrecy, it was a mirror, not a destination. The pyramid wasn't built to make you bow, it was built to make you look up. The eye doesn't watch you, it invites you to watch yourself. The twin pillars weren't meant to divide, they were meant to show you the gateway. Inside, secret societies were never just about control. Not in their origin, they were blueprints, echoes, attempts to protect something sacred from a world that had forgotten how to receive it. Not gold, not power, consciousness. The secret wasn't how to manipulate others. It was how to remember who you really are. A being of light, a fractal of source, a traveler in a temporary form. And they hid it, because knowledge of that magnitude in the hands of those not ready can destroy, but in the hands of the awakened, it liberates. You were never meant to stay asleep. That's why the symbols still speak, why the patterns still call to you, why, despite everything, something in you knows there's more. Because it's not just the societies that remember, it's you. You remember. In the stillness, in the synchronicities, in the nights you couldn't sleep because the stars were whispering your name. You felt it. This life is not your first initiation. You've walked temples in lifetimes you can't name. You've heard the chants. You've held the scrolls. You've stood at the gate of the unseen and chose to come back. Now for this moment. Not to worship the past, but to awaken the future. And here's the final truth. They don't fear the secret societies. They don't fear the symbols. They fear you, an awakened human, one who sees, one who remembers, one who no longer needs permission to be divine. Because when enough people remember, the old world can't survive. Not because of rebellion, but because of resonance. The new world won't be built by institutions, it will be built by individuals. Silent builders, frequency carriers, those who carry the secret, not in books, but in their presence. That's you, that's now. And the door has always been open. Welcome home.